I'm Dan Weedin. Welcome to Unleashed with Dan Weedin, this brand new series that I've got going. I'm excited to have my very first guest. And Erik, I guess you're going to always have that mantle of being my very, very first vidcast, I guess that's what you call it, vidcast guest on Unleashed with Dan Weedin. I'm sure you're proud.
It's an honor and a privilege, Dan.
Everybody, this is Erik Pelton. He is a longtime colleague and friend. And as a matter of fact, he is also my trademark attorney for the word unleashed, which I couldn't believe was available. It was, and Erik helped me get it. And in fact, that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is the importance of trademarking your intellectual property, especially as we're recording this in the midst of the worst global pandemic in over 100 years, and certainly of the modern era, why it's become even more important. So Erik, first of all, welcome. And would you mind just giving a little bit of a background on what you do and how you help your clients?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm based in Falls Church, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., a couple miles. And I launched my own law firm in 1999 to focus on helping businesses protect their brands in a efficient and cost-effective, generally flat fee manner. And so during the last 20 years, I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with thousands of businesses, many of them small businesses, of all different types of backgrounds and industry sectors, from consultants to real estate to restaurants to software, you name it. And I've had the pleasure of working with them to build, protect, enforce their brands. And of course, their brands are one of the most important assets that any business really can have.
Well, Erik, before we dive into some of my questions, I think one of the things that was a misconception for me, and it might be for many other small business owners and entrepreneurs, they think about this whole branding and intellectual property as for the big players in the game, whether it's Starbucks or Costco or Amazon. I'm naming all of my local
Right.
Seattle brand,
Right.
but they think about that. They should also think about it for their own, no matter how large or small they are, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I like to say it's actually more important for a small business, because a big business can often afford to litigate or spend its way out of a situation if they get entangled in one that relates to a product name, a service name, a logo, a slogan. Whereas for a small business, to face spending $10,000 on legal fees or having to rebrand their main product at an expense and obviously a hit with their customers is very, very traumatic. So the protection is even more important when you're a small business. It's like insurance for their
Right.
brand, to help lower the risk that they're ever going to incur those situations.
And a really quick story that you know about, I branded the term unleashed as relates to businesses and presentations and programs and speeches and all of that, any type of development training. And I'd found out from a client that another consultant, another speaker, was giving a presentation, and the title of his speech included the word unleashed, and it was around business and leadership, which is my brand. And so, long story short, I called you and I said, I need to protect this. What do I do? And your comments, why don't you email them first? Why don't you, before you go into a whole lot of things, why don't you check with them? And I did, and he was great because he had his own trademarks and brands. He said, oh, I see it perfectly. I'm going to call right away to the conference and have them change the title. And we actually started a fun little relationship after that. The point is that I had worked so hard to identify my brand that a client recognized that brand and said, oh, this isn't Dan speaking, something's wrong. That's the importance that you were just talking about, right?
Right. So number one is in communicating to your clients, your customers, when you use the R with a circle, when you've protected your brand, it shows them that it's something that you value and cherish and treasure, and that you've taken the time and the money to protect it. So it makes the brand stronger connection with the customers just based on that alone. And then from a practical standpoint with those disputes, like you mentioned, the fact that you were able to show, I've already taken the steps to register this. The government has already sort of blessed it, right? By giving me
Right.
the registration, assigning it a number. Here's a public record. The other person that you're sending it to then knows that, okay, this person's serious about this. They've already spent money and time to protect it. It's going to be that much harder for them to challenge it or deal with that dispute. And so it makes resolving a situation that much more likely to be quick, to be inexpensive, to be, more efficient.
So one thing, again, I have all these questions coming up. Speed is important to get this done. If you have an idea, if you have something that you've put out there that you think you're going to run with, and I'll use me again, I'd use this Unleash, and I was going to keep working with it. You shouldn't wait, because it's not a short process. You shouldn't wait to at least start the process to see. It's not terribly expensive, but getting there first is important.
Correct. Establishing that public record of filing is important because you start getting some rights as of that filing date. The process as a whole takes about a year on average because the government is not quick and there's a variety of hurdles and steps.
Especially today, right? They're really not quick today.
Well, actually, we're lucky that the trademark office was operating. A lot of people work from home already. They have a great telework program, and all of the filings are electronic. And so they have not had to do a tremendous adaptation. So I'm not anticipating that it will really slow things down for applicants now. But again, the important thing is to start the process to get that filing date. It doesn't really matter necessarily how long it takes. And something important that a lot of people don't know is that you can actually file an application. Say you have an idea this week and you're planning to launch a program in the fall, you can file for the name of that to start the trademark protection now before it's even launched, before you have a website, before you have a sale, before you have a customer. You can file the trademark application based on what's called intent to use the name and start the process extra early. Because if you waited until the fall in that scenario, you run the risk that in the interim over the summer, somebody comes up with a similar name and files or starts using before you, and they could actually pull that name out from under the rug from you.
Yeah. Here's my quick thing. Believe it or not, people think about the same things you do. We're not the only ones that come up with these brilliant ideas, right? Hey, we just mentioned as we record this in May of 2020, and hopefully people will be watching this all the time in the future. COVID-19 is still we're deep into that. Talk about how brands have been impacted by this COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah. So thanks for asking that important question. Obviously, every sector of the economy, every business, every brand is at a minimum affected, probably suffering, adapting to new work techniques, things like that. So that's affecting all businesses, but in the way that they handle it, in the way that a brand is managed, which the brand is really the persona that reflects on customers, right? So when you say Nike or Amazon, it's more than just a product, right? It's a whole feeling about what their attitude is, what their values are, what the quality of their products are. All of those things are wrapped into the brand. And so you're seeing some brands do a great job managing the crisis and communicating with their customers and adapting and doing things, while you're seeing some other brands that are really poor communicators or burying their heads in the sand. And that's going to cause a lot of damage. The ones who are doing a great job of managing their brand, I think, are really going to be best positioned as we transition out of the crisis and into a growing economy again. They'll be far better prepared because of that relationship with their clients and their customers to resume growth as easily as possible.
And to that end, one of the things that you and I talked about prior to this interview was something that I found to be really intriguing. I have been talking to my clients ad nauseum about innovation, because as we move into a brave new world, the roaring 20s are going to be a different roaring 20s, I think, than we anticipated. As we move into a world where physical distancing may still be in play for a while, and even after vaccines come, may not change. So a lot of the innovation that we're doing now needs to stay on. Some of that innovation, if not all of it, might need some new looks as far as trademarking, registering, new names, new developments. If you're doing trainings or if you have a product, some of this that you just created, it might need to be protected, insured, so to speak, moving forward. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. In times of crisis, we actually see, I think, a surge in innovation, right? As
Yeah.
people are confronted. I mean, this is also part of the American ideal and our entrepreneurial spirit, right? And we're going to not only just make the best of this challenge, but find new ways of doing things that, maybe we'll look back and say, wow, why didn't we think of that 10 years, 20 years earlier? Right? And the potential for, like you say, tele-delivery of services,
Right.
energy efficiency, all kinds of industry sectors. And I'm seeing lots of clients come to me already with innovations, with new programs, new products, or adaptations on existing programs. And so whenever they have new brand names or expansions of their line of services or products,
Right.
those are intellectual property that they're creating, and they should examine what needs to be done to properly protect it. So we have been busy filing a lot of trademark applications, believe it or not, over the last month for clients that are adopting new things and growing or adapting in innovative ways. And I expect that will continue for quite some time.
So Erik, if somebody watching this might say, I'd never thought of that, and Dan just said it's fairly inexpensive, but what does that mean? Can you talk about two things? Number one, the process. I got an idea. I'm going to move forward with it. I want to give Erik a call. What is the process? How long? I guess three things. How long does it take normally? And how much should I expect to pay for it?
Right. So first, when you have an idea, there's three main areas of intellectual property protection. There's trademark, copyright, and patent. So just to briefly dissect them, copyright protects original work. So this video recording, you will own the copyright on, and nobody can use it or edit it without your permission.
And I don't have to do anything other than put the little C there, right?
That's right. Just by publishing it, some of the protection attaches automatically.
Okay.
You can register it to enhance the protection, but we'll save that for another day. But copyright protects content. So whether it's written word, books, movies, film, podcast, art, visuals, sculpture, all of those things are copyright. Patent protects inventions. So traditionally, those are machines, right? And new ways of building and making things. However, there are some patents that also apply to software and to other things that aren't traditional physical machines. But patents are related to protecting those items, and their protection is limited in terms of the lifetime, and their registration process is generally more complicated and more expensive. So you're looking at spending many thousands of dollars to protect a patent. I'm not discouraging anyone from protecting patents. If you have potentially patentable innovations, you should talk to a patent lawyer immediately, because there's also timing requirements. And then trademarks, as I mentioned at the outset, are your brand names, your logos, your slogans, things that identify your products or services and distinguish them from your competitors. So airlines, we could think, there's Delta, United, JetBlue. Those are all brand names and trademarks. There's slogans like fly the friendly skies, and you can imagine their logos. Those are all separate trademarks because they identify their brand and their services. To protect a trademark, as I said, it takes about a year, but the important thing is to start the process. And in terms of costs, the government charges a filing fee that's basically going to be about $250 for a simple application. And then while you're not required to have an attorney, it's, of course, I'm biased, but I recommend that you have an
I
attorney
do too. I
because
recommend Erik as a matter of fact.
it is complicated. It is lengthy. But so you're looking at spending about $1,000 on legal fees. And, there's a lot of options. You could spend less, you could spend more. It depends what level of service you want. But
Well, and I guarantee you this, you'd spend a lot more of your valuable time trying to deal with all of that. I know that for without a doubt. So I think it's important to have that type of guidance, that type of knowledge. You know, basically having an expert take care of that for you.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you, of course. I mean, I've registered more than 3,000 trademarks for clients. So I'm always still learning a lot.
And by the way, how
That's
long
after
does
doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, how long does a registered trademark last? Obviously, it has to be renewed.
The registration, right, can last forever. So some registrations are over 100 years, like over 100 years old, like Coca-Cola and Budweiser's, been around for many, many years. But they do have to be renewed. Generally, once you get the registration, the first filing is due after 5 years to show that you're still using it. Then there's a renewal due after every 10 years, at the 10th anniversary, the 20th, the 30th. And it costs a few $100s to renew it. At that point, the business has obviously been sustained if you're looking to renew it. And it's generally a great value to continue that protection given what's been invested in the brand.
So as we kind of wind down a little bit, one final question as far as once you've got the registered trademark and the differentiation is the circle R versus the TM. And you can talk briefly about that as well, but the protection part of it that I learned from you was you have to make sure that little R, and I'm sure there's a more formal name than the little R, but the little R or the TM is on everything that you're using that word with in order to protect it. And then even I started using Unleashed as a registered trademark at Toro Consulting Inc. at the bottom of it because that goes to show somebody who's looking at it, oh, this is off limits. So if you stop doing that, you actually jeopardize all that work you did. Did I hear it?
Yeah.
Did I learn from you correctly?
Well, so it's not a legal requirement that you use the symbol, but it is a good idea.
Okay.
You will see some very large companies like Apple almost never use the R with a circle. I call it the circle R. It doesn't have a formal name, believe it or not. They almost never use it for stylistic reasons,
right.
But they know that they can afford to dispute somebody over the ownership.
Right.
When you're a small business, especially, it's valuable to use it to show people that it's protected, to help. If somebody even has a glint of an idea of, oh, maybe I could borrow this, the R with a circle might, warn them enough that they change their mind. And again, it also communicates that strength and investment to your customers and clients, which is valuable. So R with a circle once it's registered. Before it's registered, you want to use either TM if it's a product, a physical product like a phone, a bicycle, a flag, you would use TM. If it's a service, like restaurants are providing services, websites and podcasts are providing services, then you use SM, which stands for service mark. You'll find that a lot of people don't really get that distinction and they use TM regardless, and it's not the end of the world, but technically those should be SM for service mark.
Okay. And as we come to a close, I'm going to give you a final word to talk about you. You obviously are in the Washington, D.C. area. Congratulations to your Nationals. So now my Mariners are the last team to never even make a World Series. So hopefully that will change at some point in the future, especially if we get baseball back at some point. I do miss that. But talk a little bit. You work with people all over the country, all over the world. Talk a little bit about your practice and how people can reach you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So people can reach me at erikpelton.com. That's ERIKPELTON. There's a contact us on there, or they can find me on social media, LinkedIn, everywhere. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm always pushing out new content, whether it's videos or podcasts or blog posts. And I love hearing from people all over the country and all over the world. I recently wrote a book, my first book that I
Oh,
published. It's called Building a Bold Brand. And you can find that on Amazon or at buildingaboldbrand.com. And in there, I talk a lot about choosing a name, making sure that it's available, the application process, and all of the tips and tools that I've learned from my clients and from building my own business over the last 20 years to help build and sustain a strong brand.
great, great. Well, Erik, thanks again for being the inaugural episode that you'll get to claim forever. Thank you for joining us here, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Keep watching the rest of these vidcasts as we talk to other experts. But for today, Erik, thank you very much. It's been great. To all of you out there, be well and be unleashed.